We must go to the cave of secrets and discover the golden key. We must go to the cave of secrets and discover the golden key.
So hello Donny. How are you doing?
Hello. Yeah.
Would you like to introduce yourself in this virtual world to the students of Maxfield College?
Well, we'll see if the conversation has any value. But basically, we're pals, and we are interested in the topic, and it seems to be the focus.
Yeah.
AI will be the focus of the conversation, and that suits me fine. I've been interested in it for a while, and not in a professional capacity, but just an enthusiastic. Creative capacity, and there never seems to be a lack of news.
Feels like we've entered into a
new
age, in a similar way that maybe the industrial era changed society in the world. Seems like it's a similar sort of fundamental shift in the, force of production and all that.
No doubt about it.
So, how have you been using AI in your own creative work?
Creative work, I can just talk about everyday work. I use it professionally, just as leisurely, just informational, if that's a word I can use. Creatively as well, but being mindful not to replace my, creative endeavours by just substituting it with it. I think that's important for an artist.
I think you can, definitely. Because you do traditional art, and you obviously do compositions, right? So, Donny you studied music, didn't you? I think you studied music production. You're also a pianist, so you play piano, traditional keyboard as well, I suppose. But then, if you're going to describe your music in any way, what sort of style it is, or genre, or influences, how would you describe
it? I suppose I just get in just anything with sound, really. New sounds, finding interesting blends of acoustic and electronic things. A lot of sampling, a lot of field recordings, traditional instruments, particularly piano. Mix it with synthesizers and all kinds of effects.
Well, you've been very prolific.
It's going all the time.
Has it been 3 or 4 albums you released recently? I know, though a lot of the work's been under production for many years, decades, hasn't it? But, do you think that AI has helped speed up that process, actually, in terms of obviously you've had lots of tracks which you've had in various stages of completion. Do you think that AI has actually helped you to with some of the processes, mastering or doing certain production processes that would otherwise have been very laborious and drawn out, I suppose?
What's funny about that is, even though I'm a big digital enthusiast, and I'm all for good AI, if you like, in terms of aligning with our interests. But funnily enough, music's been the one thing that I've not dived into when it comes to AI. I'm aware there's mastering tools available, but I just said no.
Well, I suppose that. Do you think that makes sense though? Because I think
part of the process.
In a similar way, with my painting, whilst I do sometimes do a bit of generative AI, it doesn't feel the same as if I was painting a painting in real life, because I wouldn't feel the same sense of control over it, but also just the same sense of novelty, I suppose. I guess it's sort of similar to that in some respects, isn't it? Like you have a very, because I think when you're doing sound production or composition, you have you might not necessarily have a very clear idea always of what you're doing immediately, but when you get to a certain stage of it, you're like, I want to achieve this effect, I have this in mind, and if you have an automated process doing that, you might end up with something that would be a bit more standardized, I guess. I mean, it would probably be passable, but it would not necessarily have that certain magical, unspecifiable something that makes, that makes it really stand out, I guess, right?
Yeah, 100%. It goes from, it depends how you want to spend your time creatively. And more and more AI will be able to just fulfill pass the double test and all, pretty much all categories.
Okay, so here's an interesting question. How far do you think it could go? Like, and you can go completely...
Sorry, man,
So, like, how far do you think AI could be developed, like, in terms of, like, any way you think it could go? Like, even if it's just... anytime you want to talk about
in the short term?
Well, short term, let's start with short term, actually, and related to creative media, and then let's make it longer than that, like, far in the future, potentially. That'd be interesting.
Alright, so short term, you're probably talking about consistent models that are reproducible in 3D space and 2D video, certainly.
Yeah.
So you can change any angle, direct any movie, have consistent voice actors and your body shape, face shape, and then you're talking about being in 3D environments like this, where you're having conversation much like this, and that would be one domain that'll pass the double-blind test. In a low fidelity environment like this, where there's not a lot of sensitivity, it's one barrier to break through. Real life would be a more difficult one.
Even though the stylized nature of this environment is quite nice, like you get the lens flare off the sun and everything, it's fairly pleasant. It's nowhere near like say the detail or the same clarity or just the same feeling as like a real life scene, of course. But then here's a question for you. I've thought about this a bit. Like, do you think that would bring some level of complications? And like, how would you people already are quite addicted to the internet, right? So how do you think it could have possibly affect the way that people use technology in like an unhealthy way? Actually, that'd be quite interesting question. Like one of the drawbacks of it.
The human mind addicts to anything. Right. So another thing that we find captivating. But we'll just spend more and more time in VR. The more seamless it gets, the faster it gets more comfortable, the more powerful it gets. It's ultimately a big question of how to avoid being attacked using it. I think technology is more of, it's just more stuff. More information, more stimuli, more entertainment. So I don't think it stops there.
So taking it back to your own work and your own creative workflows, how and where have you mostly been using AI? How have you been using it? What platforms have you been using as well?
Got a subscription to GPT-4, so that's the advanced voice mode. That's very fun seeing people's reactions to it the first time you show it to them, because they thought the capabilities of AI were, and then what they witness in real time, and that's just enormously fun, because you can just say, give me someone from Glasgow, a Scottish accent, can change like an airman, and it really has intricacies of language there. It's really convincing. So I just use that generally for information gathering, fact check on important topics. It's replacing Google. Its search function's amazing. And then using Runway, which is another bit of solid subscriptions for that, for typically video generation. But yeah, I've not really made anything substantial, to be honest. It's always bits and bobs. And it's just cool having this conversation. It's not like, I just feel like we're two pals chatting. It's not like, I don't see myself as
well, I think I think your
I'm always
music's
open
amazing,
to kind of,
and I think it's been very interesting to see also the way that you've been using AI, because you're doing it it's a sort of like, in a similar way to, I think I've been trying to use it with my games development workflows. It's like, because we do have to consider ethics also when we're creating this stuff. But basically, I mean, you're primarily a musical creator. I know you do visual art as well, like you do the paintings and everything too, which is very good. But like, your primary mode of expression is using musical, isn't it? And I feel like you're using the visual videos you're generating with Runway, which are video to video, if I understand correctly as well, right? So you're getting source material and you're modifying it almost like in a post-production process, right? It's like and then you're using that to visually represent your music. So, and you're not, obviously, it's just being used basically as a promotional tool for your music, essentially, right? But also it's a way to visually explore ideas as well that the music provokes. So I find it quite an interesting implementation of the technology, and I think in a way it's like a good example of where, like, who's getting hurt in that transaction that's occurring, right? Like, if I don't know, I mean, I can't really think of an example of how that's affecting anybody negatively, like, because obviously a lot of the debates in the minute is like people are saying, well, it's stealing artists' work, they're not getting any royalty for this work that's been mined, and basically most of the data on the internet, if not all of it's been mined, I guess, right? But then you have this usually with any technological leap, I think, where there is obviously it opens up creativity as much as it can have issues as well, especially with copyright. I mean, even in the early days of the internet, you had a lot of issues with Napster, for example, was a good one. A good example of where you had copyright being challenged in some respects. People share files easier, and I mean, with AI, I think some creatives do feel very resistant to it. In some respects, it's still a raging debate, and I think the way you apply it is interesting and ethical, because you're basically just using it as a bolt-on, a tool, if you were, to enhance creativity that you're already doing anyway, without it even existing, if that makes sense. A bit of a jumbled word salad there, but you know what I mean, I think. So, can you tell me about 3 or 4 specific projects you've created recently which you used AI on, actually? That'd be interesting.
Used AI on? Again, music can't be counted there. I'm quite sort of purpose not using AI with my music. That's something I want to do as much creatively as possible.
Board game?
Actually, I'm designing a board game at the moment, and I realise it's been an old idea for a while, just working on the lore, but it's actually so impressive what GPT and similarly other LLMs can do, large language models. Sure, I mean, AI tools are so capable now, you could literally just say, come up with a theme of, and you can make it very broad. Well, for example, Chris and Donny sat in a VR Zen garden beside a temple, and it's got enough knowledge base there to create something intriguing, and you can just basically give it basic commands in terms of direction, so you can influence how much input you have over it, and it's just such a good kind of creative partner for ideas.
I found it very useful,
really
actually.
quite.
So I did
the last couple of
City
years
of the Damned, and that was an experiment it was when I was living with you, actually, when I did the detective game, because I was using the generative artwork to inform the story as I went on.
Yeah.
And I was using it just to see how you could implement it, really, mostly in the workflow. With like steampunky guns.
I remember that, the gun design.
Actually, one student picked me up the other day and said, this isn't technically a revolver or something. which is quite funny. He's like, and I was like, oh, okay. Because I got them to review, because some of them are doing interactive fiction now. So I got them to I gave them a selection of 5-man games and said compare and contrast them, and review them, and obviously feel free to rip them to bits and do bug reports and everything. But then one of the students did pick up that the gun was not the type it really. It wasn't the correct type, so I was called out there big time. But
I mean, fair enough. If you,
accuracy's accuracy, I mean, like I was saying to him, it's that's the whole point. Do pick these things out. You're supposed to be reviewing them. It's not you don't have to think, oh, I can't write down what I actually think. That's the whole point. And I think as a game designer anyway, or designer in general, I'm more someone that can pick out what they think is a flaw, or that's good, because then you ultimately feedback, constructive feedback will help you develop as a creative and as an artist, of course.
Yeah, definitely, and it's just more input, isn't it?
Go away.
Someone's trying to join us. I'm going to deny them. So for some reason they're trying to.
Get out of it.
Yeah. So you said 3 or 4. Not really got any, in truth, big projects. I did intend to make. Intend to make long videos.
It'd be interesting. I can show that clip actually. The Fallout you did, because that was using Runway, wasn't it? Right? Because that looked like the start of quite an interesting experimental short film, and obviously for the students as well. It might be interesting for them to explore that, because I do see Runway being really, really useful in terms of if you want to do post-prod on whether it be a short film or maybe learning about production processes or production effects, because the outputs you got from that were actually really interesting, I thought. And it's fascinating just to see that from a few sample clips that you were able to feed it, that the quality was actually pretty damn good, to be fair, and it was a very interesting result. Especially there's there's the scenes with the irradiated environments, and for that it has a lot of potential there for especially for emerging creatives who want to explore different visual styles. I think you could have a really interesting application there, because you can tweak the settings somewhat, and you can sort of experiment very fast with a varying degree of visual styles, which I think is a really interesting application. I'll play the clip whilst we're talking about this. But what inspired the? I mean, I guess it's because you're a fan of Fallout, but what gave you the idea for doing that particular project?
Probably just seeing the capabilities of the software, and it was the first time of sort of turning myself and my friends, just making little silly clips, for fun, and just experimenting with the slider of how much of the original footage was used.
Yeah, you can
So you can go from 100% to 0, and it was just fun, and the software is as bad as it's ever going to be today, and that includes every area of AI. And that's
I want to play it a lot more myself. Actually, I had a little bit of a quick play with it, but it does seem really interesting. I think as a sort of post-prod tool, I think it's got a lot of potential for whether it be fixing things that need fixing, or adjusting lighting, or just adding like really special effects. I think it has a lot of potential to be used like in a as another tool in an art, like a post-production probably.
Yeah, storytelling.
Yeah, well, something
movie making,
I think
short
really
stories,
interesting.
just little snippets of things.
The idea of a generative narrative game or something, where it's in maybe in a virtual environment like this, but the story is constantly just randomly generated. Can you imagine something like that? It'd almost be like a dream simulator. So you go into it like this, and then it just starts generating stories and characters, and it goes on forever. So almost like the never-ending story. I don't know. The never-ending AI story.
Well, here's an interesting one for you.
Yeah.
I will preface this by saying, all these technologies are going to just continually cross-pollinate. So, for example, we're at a time where, we can do it for stills and videos, but it's the delay that we have just now that, although the tools are amazing, let's just say you want to see a guy with ginger hair and beard sitting on a bench by a temple. And you put that into software, you'll get an image, and then you say, okay, Studio Ghibli style, you'll get a slightly different output. But essentially, what's going to happen is it will all happen in real time. So you could be telling a story about anything, and visuals will accompany that at some sufficient degree of frames per second. And it'll just, that combined with, AI character models, media environments, it's just going to explode in all directions. Speaking of which, I did this earlier for a pal. I put this prompt into GPT, so bear with me. You're talking about procedural storytelling. Well, this is a pretty good example. I won't say what prompt it was, but you can guess. And again, this is put in. 2 seconds. Find it 2 seconds. I've got the lack of preparation. Sure. Yeah, so this was done in literally a second.
Yeah.
Are you ready? Is this how we finish there? The wind howled through the hollow ruins of the nuclear power station, its cries reverberating off the cracked walls like the added moans of the dead. The sky outside was a bruised mix of green and grey, churning with the ash of a broken world. The air stank of decay and radiation, the very taste of it metallic on your tongue. You come here seeking shelter, a mistake you now realize too late. Because he was here. The sound came first, echoing through the labyrinth of pipes and abandoned corridors. The voice was high-pitched and sickly sweet, bouncing off the walls in a way that made your skin crawl. It was wrong. Too loud, too gleeful, like a children's entertainer who never stopped smiling, even as he put the wings off butterflies.
Whoa. Oh my god.
I'll just wait for it. You stumbled into the control room. You're breathing ragged, your heart hammering against your ribcage. The consoles were dead, their blinking lights long extinguished, leaving only the faint glow of radioactiveness seeping through the cracks. You pressed your back against the wall, trying to steady yourself, trying to convince yourself it wasn't real. Thud, thud, thud. The sound of his enormous, flabby feet echoed down the hallway. Wet and deliberate, the rhythmic slap of flesh against metal sent shivers down your spine. He wasn't in a rush. He didn't need to be. He knew you were here. You clutched a rusted pipe you'd torn from the wall earlier, and the jagged end trembling in your grip. It wouldn't be enough. It wouldn't even slow him down. The laughter began then, low at first, but rising in pitch and intensity. It was that same awful childlike giggle, a mockery of joy that curdled in your stomach. You peeked around the edge of the console, your breath caught in your throat. You stood at the far end of the hallway, silhouetted by the faint green glow of leaking reactors. The oversized, spotted paint form wobbled grotesquely as he moved his bulbous arms, twittering with an unnatural energy. It's like you in the morning, Chris. The grin on his face. The grin on his face was eternal, those beady black eyes scanning the room with a predator's focus. Lobby! He crooned, his voice a sing-song mockery of a lullaby. You ducked back, heart pounding so hard you were sure he could hear it. The sound of his footsteps grew louder and you scrambled on hands and knees for a service hatch in the corner of the room. The latch was stiff, corroded by time and neglect, but you heaved it open with a grunt, slipping inside just as his shadow spilled into the room. You pulled the hatch close behind you, silencing your breath as much as possible. Through the tiny gap you could see him. He moved with an awful, jerky rhythm, his body swaying as if it didn't quite obey the rules of physics. His oversized hands reached out, caressing the lobby, leaving greasy pink smears on his lobby. He screeched suddenly, the sound making you flinch. He froze, his head snapped towards the hatch as if he'd heard it. Those black eyes locked onto your hiding spot, and for a moment there was nothing but the sound of dripping water and your own heartbeat. Then slowly, the grin widened. Thud, thud, thud. He lumbered closer, his massive form blocking the dim light from the room. The hatch shuddered as he pressed his weight against it. The sausage-like fingers wiggled in the gap, desperate to reach you. No, 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 you whispered, clutching the pipe so tightly your knuckles turned white. He clawed backwards, the confined space pressing against your shoulders, the smell of oil and rust choking you. Suddenly he stopped. The pressure on the hatch disappeared. Silence. You dared to exhale, the relief washing over you like a tide. You shuffled forward, peered through the gap, your hands trembling. The hatch exploded inwards with a deafening crash, his massive form squeezing into the tunnel with impossible speed. He screamed, flailing with the pipe as his blobby hand snatched your ankle, pulling you in. The grip in your ankle burned, not just the pressure of his grotesque, clammy hand, but something deeper, more insidious. It seeped into your skin, a sickly, numbing warmth that spread up your leg like molten sand. Your muscles locked and the pipe slipped from the grasp, pattering uselessly into the darkness. Lobby. He crooned again, his voice syrupy sweet and dripping with malice. It's almost over. I never realized how long it was. The edges of your vision blurred, the dim glow of the reactor like smearing into nauseating streaks of pink and green. Your heart hammered as your mind struggled to comprehend what was happening. His other hand came down, smothering your chest with a fleshy blanket. And you felt the toxin coursing through you, hallucinogenic, paralytic, and inescapable. Your screams choked into silence as your throat seethed. You couldn't move, couldn't fight. The world around you twisted, the shadows of the power station bleeding away, replaced by a pulsing, fleshy void. The laws of nature unraveled as you were pulled into his grotesque body, space that defied all logic and reason. Inside
He's been eaten by Mr. Blobby now.
The exterior was a sick facade. Yeah. A shell barely containing the raving, chaotic abyss within. The air was thick and wet, filled with a cacophony of whispers, sobs, and screams. Shapes floated in the darkness. It does go on a wee bit.
Oh
yeah.
my god,
And
that was
says, "Blobby loves you."
yeah, like so weird. Yeah. Funny.
So weird, but I'm just thinking that's not beyond our skill to write it, but it would take. It would take a good hour, I reckon. It would take a good hour to write that at the fastest. So there's like, you can use the language and it was literally.
I guess essentially what it's doing is like it'll have it won't have awareness, but it's pattern recognition. It'll know the structure of how to structure a text. It's similar to that, and then the rest of it will just be like figuring out what word comes after the other in the sequence of that, I guess. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's not. It doesn't know, does it? It doesn't have any. It's not. Yeah, I was thinking, or being aware. It doesn't have being, does it? It's just. It's literally. I mean, it's based in algorithm. Essentially, it's like a highly advanced way of. It can crunch. It's crunched all this data already, and then it just. Yeah. Well, that's quite. It was very comic. I was surprised, but it was Mr. Blobby. I didn't realise it was Mr. Blobby.
I mean, one way to see it is
I guess we are in
we're
algorithmic.
You know, we're biological.
Probably because obviously we created the concept of algorithms, I guess. Well, do we create? I don't know. Well, we are the ones who've implemented it, but then it makes sense that as we are from nature, that we'd repeat the patterns that are in nature, because not to get too deep, but we are nature, aren't we? I mean, that's why we are the living, thinking universe, as it were, I suppose. I mean,
100%.
Well, we've had quite a fairly long discussion, actually, so should we do do the
Oh, we're just getting started.
questions for students, actually. I might have to go on. Sorry.
Cool. Yeah. I'm kind of. Oh, is honored the word. I'm surprised that.
Well, you thought about it. I mean, you read the Kurzweil.
Someone else studying
into it for a while, haven't you?
Yeah, what's interesting is the further back you go into the past, he's seen by a greater percentage of people to be more cultish.
Yeah.
But as we approach the present day, more and more people are realising
singularity, wasn't it?
His main thesis is, I mean, it's a hard one to argue against. The only thing is maybe he's overly fixated on certain dates of specific adoption of technology or time they'll be invented. But that's less important.
Yeah, I can do this, apparently.
Are you doing death metal sounds?
The singularity as well, isn't it? The idea that AI gets to a point where it can create a greater intelligence than its own creator, i.e. us as in humanity. And then once it gets to that point, it's like, well, that's where alignment becomes important, isn't it, from what I understand. So AI alignment, from what I understand, is if it does get to that level, it's like AGI, well, beyond AGI really, even, I suppose. Will it then have what will it think of us? Like, how will it react to us? What will it? Yeah, because it'll be vastly superior in terms of like analytical intelligence. Well, definitely. So,
and further separated from our fixed intelligence. Yeah.
First student question is: what made you use AI? I mean, what got you interested in it? I suppose that's quite a simple one, but yeah, what made you use it?
I suppose became interested in what was possible.
So it's like experimenting with it,
like people get new phones. People get new phones because they can do new stuff. So everyone's into this
curious
to some degree or another. I guess my interest in it became more about the underlying principles, what's making it all happen.
This is a similar question as well. And when did you first use it? And when did you first use the AI?
All right.
Like, what year or? Yeah, what? Sorry, not the AI. That's the AI. Phrase it. When did you first use AI? I suppose. I think it probably means LLM, doesn't it?
Whenever I played the first
not
game.
Like video game AI, but like I think in LLM. So I think that's what the question means.
It's fairly arbitrary where we put the definition around, but LLM is basically very early on. The early version of GPT. Actually, before that, there was these basic sort of chat bots that weren't very impressive back in the day. But there's, like you were talking about earlier,
ChatGPT was just like a game changer, wasn't it?
Yeah, they've now entered the...
No, they sort of came out of nowhere. They like changed everything overnight, didn't they? We're still living, in a lot of respects, we're living in the ripples of that right now. Which is sort of interesting. Continue.
Yeah, those ripples will just get bigger and bigger.